Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabley, and my co-host, Andrew Bobo, is on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. And welcome back to Matter of Facts podcast. Phil and Andrew are back behind the mic. I put the call out, depending on when y'all heard this, either several days or even a week ago, for an Ask Us Anything episode, and y'all did not disappoint. For those of you who missed out, if you're watching this right now, you could just type questions in the chat, and we'll get to them if we have time. But I kind of left it open-ended. It was a give us a quick topic, give us a question about me and Andrew, give us a question about anything, really, and it's Ask Us Anything that doesn't violate statute of limitations or, witness protection, those sorts of problems. So, I guess we'll just jump down to it. I think we've got like 10, 11, 12 questions, and an hour and a half before everybody's attention span dries up. So, what does the MOF crew do for a living? Background. Andrew, there was actually some conjecture around you because several of our longer time listeners remember from back when you used to run calls for the fire department, and some of the newer members were trying to kind of piece together like what your background was, because you've talked about it a fair bit on the show. Whereas my job hasn't really changed that much in 6 years.
So is that the invitation to go first?
Go for it.
Yeah. So
witness protection.
Yeah. No, I've done all sorts of stuff. I kind of jack of all trades. So what I do for a living is I work in security, and I've been doing security I've been here for about 5 years now. I've been doing off and on security, like side gigs for quite a while. Worked for different companies and stuff, and just doing events and stuff like that, both armed and unarmed. I used to drive a money truck. That's pretty interesting. Never seen like $10 million up close before. And I can tell you right now, $10 million doesn't fit in a little duffel bag like they show in the movies. That's for sure. But no, yeah. So that's kind of like my background. That's I do for a living, is without giving too much away, because I like to try to keep the company I work for out of anything. So, but yeah, no, I work security, and but yeah, I've done all kinds of things. I used to be a dental lab geek, where I used to make partial denture frames. Did that for a while. Butchered animals. That was really fun. I used to freak people out. There's one lady that we had a company cookout at one of the old jobs I used to work at, and the company, they had a roaster come in, a smoker, and the smoker had a hog head sitting on the table with an apple in its mouth, and the lady just started freaking out, like couldn't handle the fact that there was an animal, and it's like, well, where do you think your food comes from? And I went into, without her, I mean, it was more of her not wanting me to hear it, but I went into how we used to kill hogs when I used to work at a butcher shop. And that basically drove her over the edge. And yeah, it was really funny. I laughed, and a lot of people laughed around me, but she did not laugh. And I was really surprised that I never got dragged into HR for that one. But yeah, it was really fun to explain to her how we used to kill lambs and stuff like that. But no, I'm like, where do you think your food comes from? But yeah, yeah, I've done a lot of different jobs. But that's what I do.
Yeah, I kind of took a very circuitous route to get myself to the point I'm at now. I was in. You saw. I'm assuming you just saw the chat.
Oh man, I got some stories.
So I enlisted in the Louisiana National Guard when I was 17. Did that from age 17 to 23. I was a Black Hawk helicopter mechanic. Deployed to Iraq and deployed again for Hurricane Katrina down in New Orleans. So I haven't been super like cagey about my experience, and my experience with the Guard. I mean, I didn't do like super cool space shuttle door gunner bang bang stuff for the Army. I was an aircraft mechanic and got roped into a lot of other Army things because regardless of what your job is, you very rarely do just that while you're in the military. You wind up getting detailed out or having to do other things, 10 air classes. But did that, resumed my college career. My college was interesting for me. I started off as an engineering major. Decided I really didn't want to pursue the path that I had set out for myself because it was going to involve living overseas. And, after a little bit of growing up and a couple of military deployments, I kind of decided I want to stay here in the U.S. no matter what. And changed to an accounting major and then realized I hate accounting. I can do it. I'm not a moron, but accounting is like one of the most frustrating experiences of my entire life is to learn how to do that. So I changed my major a second time into what it is now, which is business management. So my background is business, economics, finance, a bit of business law, contract theory, kind of a jack of all trades in the business world. And I've worked in the private sector, I've worked as an operations and a general manager at a fairly young age. I did all that before I was 30. And most recently, I've been working in the public sector, which is the closest y'all will get me to say who my current employer is, because like Andrew, I'm not shy about it, but I don't like putting them out there because I just don't need the aggravation in my life from HR. But I work in the public sector and have worked in the public sector for almost 10 years now, using my business degree and using a lot of things I learned in the private sector and trying to convince the public sector to actually be like a good steward of the public's money and not waste tax dollars. I fail sometimes, but I sure as hell try hard to convince that bunch of psychopaths, not to waste money for no reason.
Yeah. I kind of want to, I do, Tom here. Yeah. I don't remember ever, I think I've said it on the show before. I never remember saying it, but, yeah, I used to work for Spencer Gifts back in college. Had to have a job, worked in the mall. And that's where it's really interesting working there because we worked right across, the store is right across from a Hollister, which was really interesting because you'd get like the really, really preppy kids come in and it was like two factions meet. Like it was the really, really preppy, like Abercrombie Hollister kids meet with like some emo goth kids and like they would cross paths in the store and you're watching it. Like, are we going to see like a fight right now? Like, this is going to be awesome. But no, it really taught me. And if I can recommend one job for anybody to get them ready for life, retail. You learn to hate people, which I did. You learn about management of people. You learn about the kind of like what kind of people are out there kind of thing in a way. But my biggest thing is you learn a lot of social skills. Like I learned really how to talk to almost anybody, work in retail. Because it was my job, I had to go talk to them, and I found some of the best ways. And I mean, granted, it depends on where you're at. Because in Spencer's, I'm surprised I did not get fired for some of the stuff that I said. But I mean, I'd walk up to a group of kids and accuse them of stealing, freak them out, and then like just, hey, what do I do? What do you need help with? Stuff like that. And nowadays you can't do that. Someone's feelings would get really hurt. And you can't joke around like that anymore. However, screw them. One of my best friends, one of my really good friends to this day, I met her in the store. She's Irish. And I remember it was super busy and I heard her accent from across the store. I stopped helping a customer, walked over and was like, I need to talk to you. Like, because I heard her accent and I was just like, I'm sucked in. Like, it was awesome. And I mean, we're still friends to this day. And I mean, it's 10 plus, maybe 15 years almost. And so, yeah, Spencer, for one story, I sold a vibrator to a lady one time because we sat
back massager. Back
Yeah, back
massager,
massager.
family friendly.
Yeah,
So
family friendly back massager. And she is basically one of those things where, hey, let's try to have a competition who can sell the most. And I sold one we used to sell crickets, deep fried crickets in little packages. And I said, I'm like, what do I need to do to get you to buy this? And she was like, eat this pack of crickets. So I did. And then and then her husband was like, dude, that's expensive. That's an expensive massager. He goes, I'm like, well, and he goes, fine, I'll get it. She really wants it anyway. I was like, all right. But crap like that, like I had fun with it. It was a fun job. The people I worked with were great. One of the funniest things that we used to do is we had the ability at the time to play our own music over the speakers in the store. And so we would blare that, and this is when Taylor Swift became like popular and stuff. We would blare Taylor Swift, like the old country stuff from her. We would blare it over the speakers, and people would walk in and stop in like right in the middle of the store, and they're like, "This isn't what I expect to hear coming into Spencer's."
and see, oddly enough, to contrast you working mostly in face-to-face jobs who were dealing with people, I worked because despite being a podcaster, I am actually a bit of an introvert for the people that know me well. And like, I spent a lot of time working in the service industry. So like, I worked as a pool guy where I interacted with customers, but it was usually one-on-one. A lot of times it wasn't. I just let myself in the backyard, do what I got to do and leave. Worked at a tire kingdom, which doing like tires, oil changes, and alignments and stuff like that. Again, interacted with customers sparingly. Mostly, I was just focused on the vehicle. Worked as a flight line refueler, which that is an interesting job actually. For any of you who have ever worked around a general aviation ramp, like on the one hand, you are like the ramp safety guy to make sure nobody freaking dies because the paperwork sucks on that. And then on the other hand, like you're responsible for towing, marshaling, fueling the aircraft. It's somewhat of a technical job in some cases because like, just in terms of like commonly seen aircraft, there might be 12 to 15 different aircraft that come on your ramp that are the most common ones, and probably another 30 to 40 that you see more sparingly. But you have to know in your head where the fuel points are, what the turn radius is, and all this information about all these different airframes, and you have to be able to recognize that airframe on the ramp by sight. So it's not a difficult job, but it is a job that like the longer you do it, the better you get at it. And my experience being around aviation from the military fed straight into that. Really helped me kind of get a leg up on that job. But yeah, I spent a lot of time like trying my best to find jobs where I didn't have to interact with the general public any more than necessary because it's just not my thing. Like, to this day, I tell my boss constantly, I will give a presentation in front of customers. I will give a presentation in front of management. But if you just like give me a data set, my spreadsheets, and leave me alone for 8 hours, I am at my happiest. Like, I just don't want to talk to any more people than absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I got my fill of people working retail, but it was still a fun gig. But yeah. So, Stuart, why don't preppers take firearm training classes? It's not just preppers. I think it's the firearms industry in a nutshell. Why is my freaking webcam auto adjusting all of a sudden?
And see, the funny part of this is like you're one of the rare exceptions to this rule, in the fact that like you do take training classes fairly often. But like I have to admit I'm guilty of this. Like I am trying to make it a point to find a decent training company down here. You wouldn't think in Louisiana that'd be that difficult, but I have found precious few that teach anything more than a concealed carry class, and I'm looking for something a little tiny bit more advanced than that. And I mean, the best thing I could tell you is, from my perspective, bearing in mind that I already have a fair bit more firearms training than the average person does, it's not that I couldn't benefit from it, but it is lower hang. It's less of a priority to me because there are other things I definitely need more training in. Like, I really want to try to find a decent trauma or stop the bleed class just because, even though I have a fair amount of trauma training, the majority of it is 20 years old at this point. So it's one of those things where it's like, because I have this base of training from my military days, I feel like I'm at less of a disadvantage in those areas because I at least have training, even if it is outdated, even if I am like a big, chubby, middle aged guy now and not the 180-pound soldier that I used to be. But I at least have some base of training. I'm not completely new to these things. For the person who comes into firearms and trauma and all these different avenues completely wide-eyed, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, never done this before, I couldn't tell you why they don't take classes. I think maybe it's a bit of hubris, maybe a bit of normalcy bias, maybe they do that thing I tell people not to, and they think that, well, I bought the gun, it's a magic talisman to protect me from evil people. It's not like I have to learn how to use the thing. And for some people, honestly, some of it might just be ego. The last thing a person wants to do is walk into a class, screw up, and get told how much of a moron they are, how much they have left to learn. And I think for a lot of people, the risk of looking foolish in front of their quote unquote peers makes them not want to put themselves out there. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I truly hope that if you take a class and the instructor berates you and like basically cuts you down saying that you don't know nothing or do it, like pack up your stuff and walk out. This is really ticking me off.
No, and I agree with that, but even for the most good-natured and patient of instructors out there, I think part of the concern is like, I just don't want to look foolish in front of my peers. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but if you go in with an open mind, I mean, I've always went in with any training I've ever had. I go in with an open mind, and you don't sit there and be like, "Well, I know all this. I know how to do it." You don't. There's instructors, I mean, all over the place that they're constantly learning. Like they're learning new things. They don't know everything. And that's the thing is, and that's where I get, like, my goal this year is to get my dad and my and Uncle Randy into a class with Trek. And I told my dad that when I was up this past weekend, seeing them, I told him, I was like, my goals this year is I want to get you into a class this, even if it's a basic handgun, like, firearm fundamentals, how to put holes in paper, but it's like, let's work on some stuff and let's get some training in, because unfortunately I feel like it's, a lot of people, they get that CPL and then they're like, oh, I've had training. Like, anybody who's had a CPL course in any state, it's a joke. It's ridiculous. Honestly, it's stupid that we even have to have a CPL in the first place. I should be able to, like, you should have constitutional carry. I mean, should be nationwide right now. But that's the whole federal thing, and we're not going to get into that. But like, you should take training. If you don't, I'm not saying you have to, but I think everybody should. And unfortunately, the instructors that you're seeing out there, a lot of them are ran on the whole social media pushes, a lot of them where they look cool, but digging into them, like, they're actually crap. Like, you look at some of their videos and they have no backstops on anything. I mean, they're shooting steel, which is great, but what happens when they pass the steel by? Like, where's that bullet going? And it's going into a field, or it's going into a woods or something like that. It's just like, what, like, where's that backstop? Like, what's going to happen, and everything. And so that stuff is what drives me nuts. And so looking for a good quality instructor, and I think people just don't want to put the time in for doing that. And then on top of that, with the current economy, people don't want to they don't want to part with the money for it, because a lot of places, like, a lot of people keep seeing some of these big time names, Costa, was it Costa Ludus, Chris Costa, where it's, $700, $800 for a course, and you have to have 1,000 rounds of ammo.
And then add on top of that, travel lodging,
and stuff like that. Yeah,
food, gas.
Right. And I think people think that all instructors are like that. Well, no, they're not. If you look at MDFI, like, they have a lot of, they do have their classes. Like, they do have a class that I really want to take. It's like, I think $950, but it's 3 days. It's a 3-day course. And, and they're bringing in somebody for a specialized for the night vision stuff. So there's that. But other than that, their classes are reasonable. And if you and shameless plug here, well, I guess not really shameless plug, but if you go on our website and you look at the affiliates, if you use code MOF, I believe it is, it's either MOF or MOF10, you get like $10 off. Like if you're a new registrant, you get some money off of the top of the registry. So, but that's the thing is, get training. Like if it's medical, get medical training. If it's firearms training, get firearms training. If it's processing, if it's learning how to be a butcher, like that right there could go a long ways. I mean, if you look into who a butcher is or what a butcher is, butchers have been around forever, and they're always needed somewhere in time. And if something ever were like if HTF, whatever, SHTF, sorry, I can't talk. If that ever happens, something like that, and if we have to go to a MAG, like a MAG group, a mutual assistance group, like those skills are going to be needed. Someone to be able to process deer and get the best cuts out of it and be able to process it and not lose anything. That's a skill to have. Not to mention if you're into hunting and stuff like that, it's a good skill to have. So get out and learn whatever. And like I said, I don't think it's just the preppers not taking firearms training. I think it's the firearms community in general is not taking firearms advanced training when they should.
Mm-hmm. So Mark asked for a home long gun, suppressed 9mm PCC or SBR pistol 5.56. And I don't know that someone in the freaking comment section is going to lose their mind, but I don't think there's a wrong answer to this, to be honest.
No, either one. I think either one. I think, especially with the 9mm PCCs, you can get the 30-round mags, and SBR pistol, the 5.56. Again, the 30. You can get 30-round mags and get more than that. The downside right now, so, with the current situation that we're in legally, with the ATF passing the new pistol brace law, or the not law, the
opinion.
The opinion, yeah.
I won't even give them the satisfaction of calling it a law because the morons can't write laws.
No, I know that. And so that's the thing is, like, but for them, and basically it's a rule change. It's just a rule change that they decide they're like, we're going to change whatever. So anyway, with the new rule change coming down the pipe with pistol braces, which it's going to get tied up in court. It always does. And they're getting their hands slapped right now with the receiver rule. So I'm sure this rule is going to be just as the same and hopefully overturned quick. But if you're running a pistol AR and you could possibly get slapped with with crimes, with federal with jail time, even though you protected your life and you survived from a home invasion. They could come after you, and I'm sure they would, and I'm sure they will come after you over an illegal firearm that you use to defend such house. Said house. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards the 9mm PCC. They're kind of open a little bit more. If you go off the check sheet that they've released now, the PCCs, you can probably get one, build one, or find one or whatever that fits that. The check sheet that they have to get, to make it so that it's considered a pistol, so you can use a brace on it versus a rifle. And so, yeah, it's a bunch of crap. At the end of the day, I say use whatever you have to defend your home. If I had a freaking cannon to sit up at the top of my stairs, if I needed that, then so be it. Use it. But yeah, either one, honestly, long story short.
Okay. Now here's the question. What's your bump of the night go-to?
As of right now, I have a 9mm pistol Smith & Wesson sitting next to my headstand, or on my headstand, and then currently I have my 5.56 AR pistol. Trek actually was borrowing my shotgun, and that might actually change. So that might actually turn to my Beretta 1301 that I got all set up and everything. That might actually turn into a bump in the night. But currently, and once I get stuff set up on my CZ, the Scorpion, I'm actually thinking about keeping that next to the next to me, because especially with that suppressed, that would be a good little play toy.
Yeah, and see, my go-to bump in the night is 5.56.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's the thing of it. There is almost no debating the fact that 5.56, especially at home defense ranges, is going to really make a mess of a potential assailant. There's almost no debate that it's going to do tremendously more damage than 9mm will. The argument that you shouldn't use XY caliber because of risk of it flying through walls, to me, is it almost makes no sense to even go down that road, because every cartridge in my house, except for maybe 22, will blow through every wall in this house without and not even stop or slow down. So I guess my point of view is like my go-to is 5.56. I've got a home defense gun that's literally set up for it. The optic package is set up for, home defense ranges. It's got a weapon light on it. It stays freaking loaded at all times unless I'm training with it, and that is its job. And but I don't think there's really a wrong answer to this. I mean, it kind of comes down to like, what are you comfortable with? What can you operate well? What do you feel comfortable and confident fighting with? And the right answer in that scenario is, which one have you had more training time with?
Well, the thing is, though, is with I just want to throw this out there real quick, is your home defense gun, going off what you said, it's something that taking classes and using a different gun every single time, like that's awesome. That's cool. That's some good flexing that you have there. But take that time, like take a good class take multiple classes with your home defense gun. I highly recommend taking low light classes with your home defense gun. I highly recommend taking room clearing, like if you can find room clearing classes in your area with your home defense gun. Clear your house, practice with it. So get and use it, like get to know it, make sure it's set up right. Because the one thing I learned, like when Trek was on, we were talking about low light. The one thing I learned about my setup was pressure pads sucked and things started failing at night. And you realize that when you can't see, you realize you're like, holy crap, like this is bad news. So that's why some of my stuff had changed, like some things swapped around. So yeah, it just use it and train with it.
So Benji asks, what is one of your shortcomings that you need to work on? And I will out myself. My problem is physical fitness.
Mine too.
I would think that applies to some degree to a majority of people, because let's face it, middle age sucks really bad. I used to be able to friggin' survive on a steady diet of beer and pizza and still maintain an appropriate waistline, and now I even look at a slice of pepperoni and my butt jiggles for 2 days. It's a thing. So like I will happily out myself and say physical fitness, like. And it's way more than just, I need to go to the gym, because let's call it what it is. Like, I have a full-time job that I'm trying desperately to keep a family above water financially. And I don't know if y'all noticed lately, but inflation's making that more difficult by the moment. I have a family I like spending time with. I have a 10-year-old daughter that I'm trying desperately to be a positive influence in her life. And that means being here with her to try to impart fatherly knowledge and advice to. Have extended family that I'm trying to keep in touch with, make sure they're doing okay, have a variety of other things other than just being a gym bro that I've involved myself in, like, all the other prepping avenues we do around here. And the probably the thing that would do me the most good, honestly, is just putting aside 20 minutes a day to go back to the basics, do push-ups, sit-ups, like jumping jacks, start walking again. And maybe even, if I could talk my daughter into doing it with me, get back into yoga. Because, I have issues with my hips and my knees and my lower back. And I know that I had substantially less problem with my joints. Oh, the brownies. Yes, that's the other problem. Curse my mother for teaching me how to bake. But I can whoop up some brownies or cookies or blondies or whatever like that from scratch. So literally anytime in this house somebody says, hey, I kind of have a sweet tooth, I just crawl off into the kitchen and then make something that's going to give everybody diabetes. That's what I do. But I don't know, like physical fitness, if I could discipline myself again, which I was doing pretty okay for a while and then I fell off the wagon, but if I could discipline myself to put aside some time, not just for me, but for the whole family, to just do a little bit of yoga, calisthenics, go walking. I think that do all of us a lot of good. And that is the one thing I am like tremendously remiss on. Like firearms training would do me some good, but being able to walk up a flight of stairs without huffing and puffing would probably help out a lot more. I'm not that bad off. Like, last April at the Matter of Fact's camp trip, I mean, we went on a 4.5 mile hike and I did that without dying or falling out. So obviously I'm not in that awful a shape, but round is the shape and I could stand to be less round. Anything to add?
No, same. I mean, yeah, my physical fitness is my weakness. There before COVID, I dropped a bunch of weight. I got down to like 210, which I was pretty happy with. And then of course COVID hit, and I have no excuses. Like I gained it all back, and my motivation with it has been lacking. In my head, I'm like, hey, I need to do it, but it's just like I don't know. I have zero excuses. The only excuse is I'm lazy a-hole, and I'm not doing it. But yeah, that's my biggest thing is the fitness.
Oh, I have an excuse. I like tacos and I hate running. Like, it's not a good excuse, but that is my excuse. Brian, do you have proper clothing to be off grid / on the move? Yes. Yes. Actually, despite working in an office, I'm the person who like wears the least office appropriate clothing humanly possible. So like my entire wardrobe is like what I'm wearing right now, which is like Dickies, like work pants or Wrangler work pants. And like I don't know, everything I wear is like something that I could legitimately go out camping with or hiking and wouldn't feel or look that out of place and would actually be in pretty good shape to do it. So, unless I'm missing something... What do you think, Andrew? Is there some avenue of this I'm just not seeing?
No. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have the proper clothing. Winter hits, like, I mean, as of right now, when it starts getting colder, I usually throw in Carhartts and a big jacket. So if I have to walk, like a down jacket, if I have to walk any amount of distance, I have the warmth there. But no, yeah, it's and that's the thing is, and everybody's proper clothing, quote unquote, it's going to be different. My proper clothing is completely different than Phil's because of the environment we live in. But honestly, what's comfortable to you? People, if you want to wear Dickies pants, and that's comfortable, then that's awesome. If you like 5'11" and that's comfortable and you can move in it, that's awesome. Wear it, use it. Whatever's comfortable with you, get it.
Since Andrew brought up the Carhartt for cold weather, I keep a rain poncho in my truck behind the back seat at all times, 365 days a year. Because down here, this freak cold weather we're having right now, where it's going to be 17 degrees in 2 days, is highly out of the ordinary. However, I am at a much greater likelihood of having to get out of my truck and deal with some bullcrap on the side of the road, and it be pouring down raining almost the entire year here on the Gulf Coast. Like there is no dry season down here. It's varying degrees of wet season. So I keep a raincoat all the time because if you're out and about, it just makes sense to have a raincoat close by. Like it's one thing if you could say, well, I don't need to have a raincoat like on my person in a bag at all times because if the weather's going to turn south, I either change plans or I do this or I do that. But to me, like that's part of my roadside emergency kit is a poncho because it's just been my experience that Murphy's Law is a thing. And Murphy loves to make crap pop off when it is pouring down raining outside. Brian, how do you prepare your mindset? So Andrew and I, you and I have talked about this off and on for about 6 years now. And I think we've come to the conclusion time after time after time that the only real way to quote unquote prepare your mindset is through repetitive stress inoculation. And since the average person doesn't have an environment where they could expose themselves to literal life or death danger, we have to approximate that as closely as possible through training classes. So, like, if you want to prepare your mindset to deal with, like, a trauma victim, you take trauma classes, you take stop the bleed classes, you get put in that environment where you have to respond under pressure. If you want to learn if you want to prepare your mindset to deal with self-defense shooting, you go to a class where you have somebody kind of, putting it on you, trying to make you a little nervous and simulate some stress so you learn how to calm down and deal with that. But like, other than taking those opportunities to put yourself in artificial environments to simulate the stress of a real life or death emergency, the best thing I can tell you is that, like, it helps to some degree to, I call it wargaming, but like kind of preconceive what those situations are and discuss with a trusted person who hopefully knows more than you do what an appropriate reaction would be in that situation. Because the only thing worse than going into a situation without a fully prepared mindset is going into a situation with no mindset and no plan. So, like, if you at least know, or you have rehearsed and discussed and trained for a response plan, you're at least that much further down the road to dealing with a problem, even if you have not done the work to prepare your mindset to be able to respond calmly. But, like, short of artificial environments and training classes, I don't know how to tell people to prepare your mindset. I have not figured it out yet. I've seen people who, like, you put them in a fight or flight scenario and they put their fists up and they go to work and they do what they have to do. And I've seen people cave in. And I have not been able to figure out yet what the difference between the two was. Even in the military, even soldiers, I've seen people just cave in the first time something really freaked them out. And I couldn't tell you why, because they went through all the same training the rest of us did, but they reacted differently when it was boots on the ground time to go to work.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm the same boat. Like, I'm not really sure. When I was on the fire department, the couple fires that I did run, it was or just medicals. It was more of just run, like, go. Just it's you're doing it because it's your job, but you're also just doing it. Just going in and you're observing this bad accident. Okay, and now what do I got to do? The one thing that I find myself doing, I don't know if it's just because I don't know what it is, but go on if you really want to see what human nature is capable of, and kind of try to get your mind wrapped around what humans are capable of doing to each other. I think it's Live Leak, I think, is the website. Go on there, you can find all kinds of crap videos. When I did when I did a class with Ed Calderon, it was the edged class, and it's basically all these he took off Live Leak, and yeah, it was a lot of people getting stabbed, a lot of people doing bad things to other people, to other humans, but it really puts into your mind, like, it really sets it into your head, like, okay, if this is going to happen, what's going to happen? What am I going to do? I really got to stop this freaking webcam from auto adjusting. It's really annoying.
Yeah, fortunately, we don't get paid for our looks.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that at least it's blowing my face out, like it's I'll be covering something up. But no, but yeah, mindset. It's hard. It's really hard. Like, the best thing you can do is just war game. Figure out in certain situations, like I said, watch these videos. In certain situations, active shooter. Think about, okay, what would I do? And again, like Phil said, you could have this plan. You could have everything completely war gamed out, planned out, and the day happens and you drop your gun and you run. Because that's just who you are. And I'm not going to say you're a coward. I'm not going to say anything against you. But that's just, you ran. You self-preservation is something that's in everybody. I've
You know,
never been shot at. I don't know what I'm going to do if I ever get shot at. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm training for it. My mindset, I hope, is there. And, it's just a matter of training and stuff like that. So, and that's the thing is like, if you don't have the training for it, the one thing that I found is, again, Phil, you ran into this with the military and stuff like that, but a lot of people who have been trained or are training for the certain things, like their mindset is already in tune to where you fall back on your training a lot of times. And sometimes if you do conduct training and stuff like that, something happens, you fall back on your training, whether it's guns or medical, whatever it is, versus, and if some people they fall back on their training and their mind just blanks and then they go, like they just want to get out of there. So I don't know. That's a hard question. It really is.
you're reminding me of something I saw on social media very recently. It looked like it was like one of these kind of rooftop restaurants. It was obviously somewhere up in the snowy mountains, and husband, wife, child, and there was an avalanche coming down the mountain. And at first, everybody just froze in place, and they're watching this avalanche like coming down the mountain towards them. Full on normalcy bias. There's a part of that brain telling them this can't be happening to me. Like there's a literal avalanche about to wipe us out on the side. As we're sitting here eating dinner, this cannot be happening to me. And then you see the moment where the husband turns around and jackrabbits away from the table, left wife and child sitting there. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I know there are people out there that would react that way to mortal danger, just every man for themselves. I know there's a lot of people, myself included, who would say, "No, I'm either we're all going down with this ship, or I'm getting my wife and daughter out of here first. It's one or the other. I'm not living through this and having to explain to everybody where my wife and kid. It's not happening. It's not how this works." But it was a very sobering realization of the fact that there are people out there that when things go really, really bad, their brain just shuts down. Or he could have been a scumbag and figured, I'll just get another wife and kid. Who cares? I mean, it could have been. Who knows? Maybe I don't know. Donnie, he gave us a scenario. I had to shorten it because it was like a whole paragraph, and the banners here in StreamYard do not allow us to put in a whole paragraph. So it was a bug out from work, no supplies, your car or your bag gets destroyed. So let's say you did have a get home bag, the bag is gone, the car is gone. So this is whatever you happen to have on your person when you have to bug out from work. What do you do? I will say that Stuart responded to this and said, "Joke's on you. My get home bag stays, like I carry my get home bag on my back at all times." So he's saying like my get home bag comes out of the car, goes into the office with me, so I'm never without it. Fair point, but for the purposes of this scenario, let's say you have to get home from work and you have no vehicle and no stuff.
Is kill 'em and eat 'em an option? Anybody? No.
I mean, shanking a person with an ink pen is that's a hard way to feed yourself. But yeah,
like,
let's go down that road.
Sorry, Brenda, I need your car and your supplies. So, no, so the funny thing is though, is like, I do have like my get home bag, backpack or whatever is in the car. I carry a backpack with me, every day. Not just the get home bag, which it stays in my vehicle, but, just a backpack. I have just a backpack in general that has a med kit in it. I have a charging kit that I built. That goes in there. There's some extra water, stuff like that. Laptop, sometimes I throw my laptop in there, stuff like that. Like, so it's just a backpack that I carry with me. Now, if something were to happen, basically the supplies that are not needed, get taken out, and then that bag gets utilized as a get home bag now. Food, water, and it's big enough but it's food, water, supplies. I got my medical already in there, but that's one thing. That's where I would start. And if I didn't have that backpack, the first thing I would do is I would look for a backpack, go somewhere, get one, anything that you can use to put supplies in.
And see, I, on the other hand, do not carry a go bag. My supplies are all on my vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So if my car was destroyed, I mean, fortunately, I do always carry these two pieces of gear at all times, even in my office where I can't have a firearm. Actually, I have a much smaller pocket knife that I can carry in my office because this big old thing would get me fired. If you have a blade less than 2.5 inches, it's okay. Don't ask me how that makes any sense, because I could carve your damn jugular out with a box cutter. But let's just stick to the fact that that's the rule, and I like to stick to the rules. Otherwise, I go to federal prison for quite a while. But so I mean, worst come to worst, I've got a pocket knife and a flashlight. I wear comfortable shoes to the office on the rare occasion I have to go to the office anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd be in really rough shape.
For a period of time, but then you would make a plan.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I mean, honestly, it's kind of the conversation you and I talked about a while back about maybe the thing to do once you get to a certain level of prepping is to diversify your supplies and halfway between your home and your workplace, have like a little storage locker or something with a cot and some water and some food and a couple of things. That way you have a resupply point halfway if you have to walk home. Or if I know what your bug out plan is, halfway between your home and there, have another storage locker. Just,
Yeah. Yeah, and going off of Tom, kind of what Tom said is, yeah, I mean, like with you just said that I carry a knife, I carry a flashlight, I carry a multi-tool in my pocket. Honestly, I don't really need to, but I've gotten in the habit. There's two knives that I carry. So one knife is my I'm drawing a blank. I don't know what brand it is, but anyway, it's a just push button knife. But I have another knife it's a thicker blade like yours, to where I pry doors open and stuff with it. And it's used for strictly it's used to like really cut or pry open if I need to. Do I really need both of them? No. But when I started carrying the one, I switched the one to my back pocket, and two is one is none. But I carry a Bic lighter in my pocket as well. And I actually got questioned. I don't know why, but I emptied my pockets at work, I think it was. And someone was like, "Why do you carry a lighter? You don't smoke." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you carry a lighter?" And they're like, "Well, I don't smoke." I'm like, "Well, neither do I." Like, so what's your excuse? Why don't you carry a lighter? I'm like, maybe you need to make fire some from somewhere or whatever. I don't know, but I carry one just because to have one. I'd rather have it and not need it, and need it and then need it and not have it. So,
yep. And anybody that's ever done a primitive survival class that has tried to like make fire by rubbing stick scare knows that that's a really crappy way to make a fire. Like, you should really have a ferro rod at a minimum, or a Bic lighter. Or, pro tip, skip the Bic lighter. Go get yourself like one of those cheap Blazer cigar torches. That thing will get almost anything lit because it's a very small, very, very hot flame. And it is also windproof, which helps in certain scenarios. James asked, who wins in a fight, astronaut or caveman?
caveman.
I say, assuming like unarmed or weapons of opportunity, like no high technology, caveman all day long.
Well, I mean, if the astronaut can bring his freaking laser gun from space, then sure. But if you're thinking about survival, I mean, the caveman's been surviving for his entire life.
Well, and if you think
He knows how
about
to brawl.
if you think about differences in physical conditioning, bone density, muscle mass,
Mm-hmm.
I take just about any primitive man, I don't know, 15th century or before, over anyone from current times. Because even all but your biggest, burliest, most butt kicking savages today pales in comparison to the average it took to survive to even what we consider now to be adulthood 500 years ago. Back when the life expectancy was like 45 years old, you had to be a tough SOB. And of course, Tom has to hit us with the curveball. Is it in space?
Then the alien. That's it. Just
Yes, the chest burster eats them
yep.
both.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
Kyle, do you know how to use a ham radio?
Not as good as I'd like. I have a ham license. I have a ham radio. It's been on my to-do list for a long time to get some additional training, which is hard to find around here. The additional training for ham radio.
You know who you should probably look up? There's an Instagram account that I follow called the Tech Prepper, and he does a lot of ham radio, builds his own man packs, a lot of things in that vein. You'd probably find, I mean, since that is something you're interested in, you'd probably find his content interesting. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just had to.
No.
I know how to use radios. I was trained on St. Guards in the Army. My father's a ham radio operator. I've never taken the plunge to ham, mostly because my father doesn't have his ham equipment set up anymore, and I don't see myself getting my wife to put the time in to get her ham license. And if I can't communicate with my father or my wife, then ham has very little utility to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the two people I'd really like to be. Well, the two of them and my sister and brother-in-law up on the other side of town from me. Those are the three people I'd primarily like to be able to establish comms with if something pops off. And if I can't get one or all of them to take the plunge into ham, then that technology has very little utility to me. That's why I've been focused more in on other radio avenues that don't require licensing. Just because if it doesn't require a license, then I can teach. I can teach my wife the basics of radio operation, and we can just put the key in the ignition and go.
Yeah. So let's just actually jump to this one then too. So family comms from Joe. And so going off of what you said, there is Motorola, I believe it is, like they do have some long range radios that they're like right on the line of needing a ham license, but you don't. Like, and so I don't know exactly the everything behind it. I know Randy is big into it. My dad bought one. Doris, she is ham, has a ham license, and she's learning a lot of the stuff. And that's the one thing is communications. And that's one thing that Randy and I and Doris have talked about with comms, because she works not far from where I live now, and so it's one of those things. It's like, well, if something will ever happen, do we like how do her and I communicate, stuff like that. And then as things are getting, if I'm walking or whatever, and I need to communicate with Randy that we're coming in, how do we do that? And so that's stuff that we haven't figured out yet. It's kind of a slow process. But yeah, I think comms are important. And that's where, like what you said, if you can't get your family on board with doing one thing, try to find the alternative, and then find how far out these communications work to where, okay, like if we need to talk, you need to make it to this Burger King because this is the closest, the furthest away that you can be.
Yeah, and what I picked up after on a recommendation from a guest of ours, friend of yours, a while back when we talked about comms forever ago, was a set of the Motorola T800s, and I think they're just family band. I mean, they're supposed to have about a 20-mile range. Furthest I've ever tested them was a prepper camp, and I was up on top of the hill talking to my daughter who was down at the lake by like the swamp in that area. So enough range for me to be able to keep the family in contact, over moderate distances. But like the family comm plan for me and my wife has really revolved around trying to have as many avenues to communicate as possible. So like there have been times in the past when like the cell network has gone down and my wife immediately jumped onto Signal because we both use Signal, and we were able to text back and forth and talk through Signal. So I mean, there were times after Hurricane Ida, once the cell network stood back up, getting a phone call in and out was kind of tricky, but I had no trouble getting cellular data or even just an SMS text message. So like a lot of my family's comms plan, because again, can't quite get them on the ham wagon, is it's just redundancy. It's if we it's making sure that everybody knows if a phone call doesn't work, you try text. If a text doesn't work, go into your settings, turn iMessage off so it'll stop using the data and it'll use the SMS text function. If you can't use SMS and you do have data, then try to use Signal. Try to use one of the various like Facebook Messenger or something. It's really about trying to keep a person from getting tunnel vision and say, well, if this doesn't work, then nothing works. It's like, no, if this doesn't work, you've got all these other options you should try to make sure that you have some kind of communications. And the other thing that's super important when it comes to family comms is when comms cannot be established, having a plan. Like that's something my wife and I talked about a long time ago about if I'm at work and something happens, something really pops off. What does she do? How long does she stay here? Wait for me to make my way home. If I'm able to make my way home, where is she going? If she has to evacuate the house, what is she taking with her? So that way, I know that if something pops off and I get here and it takes me a day or two to get home, and I don't find my wife here, I already know what direction she's going. I know that she's bringing food and water with her. She's bringing a firearm with her. I know that she brought the animal and she brought my daughter. I already know those things because we've already talked about those things up front. So family comms is not just, I have to get my whole family to get ham radio licenses. It's different methods of communications, and it's also knowing what everyone's going to do if comms cannot be established, so that at least you don't get home and no one's here and you have no earthly idea what direction they went, because you've already talked about, if I'm not here, I'm going to this location. And then if I can't get there, or if I get there and something's bad, I go to the next location, so that until comms get reestablished, you at least know what direction everybody's going in. Tom Payne might have got ahead of us on this one. Printed laminated instructions for my wife to turn on my radio connected to battery power, listen for call to help. All she has to do is power it on and squeeze the hand mic. And yes, in an emergency situation, not having a ham license is kind of a who cares. Whatever works. But again, it's not just having the stuff, it's what happens when the stuff doesn't work, or what happens when the stuff can't work. Like, Andrew ran into that trouble after Ida when he was trying to check in on my family. Nobody could there was no communication with anybody down here for about 18 hours, I think. So, man, it just kind of was the way it was until things got reestablished. Travis asked, night vision versus thermal, helmet versus weapon mounted. And I have perilously little experience with night vision, no experience with thermal, and yours is more recent than mine is anyway.
Well, honestly, this goes all down to what you're using it for. If you're using it for hunting, weapon mounted, all the way. Weapon mounted optic that can do thermal or night is going to be the way to go. If you are using it in a different situation, I would say helmet mounted, because if you need to, there's downsides of both. But if you have a weapon mounted night vision or night vision, say just a PVS 14 mounted or something mounted onto your rail so that you can see your red dot through and you can see the, in night or whatever. The downside of that is if you need to take it off in a hurry, they do make like quick detach. But if you need to adjust shooting in a hurry and your night vision gets blown out because now you're looking directly into a light, you just, that's where I say helmet mounted, just because of the fact that if you need to get out of the way, a lot of the times you can just flip up the night vision, the nods up, or with me, with PVS 14, I keep it on my left eye because I can shoot through my right eye, keep them both open. And at night, it's really cool. Your brain like superimposes the images. So you have a white phosphorus image with a little red dot in the center of it. If you're doing if you're looking through the optic. If not, you shoot passive, so you're shooting over the optic, and that's where you would have an IR laser or some sort of something to help out with. But as far as night vision versus thermal, man, I want both. They both have their pros and cons.
Andrew wants predator vision.
Yeah, right. Excuse me. No, but the thing is, they both where one lacks, one picks up, and they overlap, and like they both have great pros and cons. The best thing you could actually do is I think it's called Cody. I think it's called, and basically Trek had it, which is super neat. It's basically a thermal device that clips onto one of your night. So if you have PBS 15s that like dual, or the PBS 14, basically that's a thermal unit that clips onto the eye, onto the portion, and it actually, so you get night vision plus you get a thermal outline of stuff. So it kind of merges the two in a way. Or you can run thermal on one eye, night vision, or the PBS 14, whatever, on the other eye. I don't know. I can't necessarily say night vision versus thermal. If you had to pick one, I would almost say night vision. Thermal is useful. Thermal is nice. You can pick out, of course, body heat from a longer distance away if needed. However, thermal, you can't necessarily look through like windows and stuff like that, because like it just registers that like cold or whatever. Anyway, I couldn't. And then with night vision, the newer technology, especially now, they've gotten better with you can see movement and stuff a lot better. And you can if you need to positively identify something, night vision is the way to go. Thermal, you can't positively identify one person from another unless you know kind of like their shape, the way they walk, stuff like that. It's really hard to identify who they are with thermal. But
see, I won't put a dog in the fight on night vision versus thermal because I don't have a lot of thermal experience. I will say helmet versus weapon mounted, it depends on your engagement range.
Right.
If you're engaging from a fixed position at moderate ranges, weapon mounted is almost always, like if you have a night vision scope where your optic and your night vision's integrated together, mounted on the weapon at moderate ranges from a fixed position, that is going to be infinitely better than trying to wiggle your head with this thing hanging off the front of you behind your optic to try to get the two into alignment to be able to see properly. If, however, you are patrolling or CQB, helmet mounted head every day. Because for those of you who don't have a lot of experience with night vision, go get an empty roll of toilet paper out of your trash and hold it over your eye and then cover the other one. And that is the amount of peripheral vision, which means none, that you have when looking through most night vision.
It's 40-degree field of view is what it is.
It is the most disorienting part of wearing night vision and operating with night vision, worse than the monochromatic field. That at least was very common in like the older Gen 2 stuff that I cut my teeth on. But I mean, it's the lack of your peripheral vision, and not just side to side but up and down, that is extremely disoriented. I have had the pleasure of whacking the hell out of myself in the forehead because I was walking underneath something and I couldn't see that it was right here. I thought it was up here, and I mean it rang my bell pretty good. But those kinds of experiences are really common when you first start messing around with night vision. So I would say by having it on your helmet, at least you can gimbal your head up, down, side to side, and kind of like, do this to expand that narrow field of vision to have a little bit more data coming into your eyeballs. And also your natural reaction if you hear noise or if you see movement is for your head to track it, and that becomes more useful if it's mounted over your eye. Not to mention the fact that, like, what have we said for all these years about why do I carry an independent light instead of relying on a weapon-mounted light for concealed carry? Because this thing has utility use, because I don't have to point my firearm at something to be able to illuminate it. Well, if your optic is attached to your rifle, you cannot look at it without pointing your weapon at it. So that's why I say if what you're doing is fixed position, moderate range, having an optic package mounted, integrated to the weapon makes things work a lot better, in my opinion. But if you are the one moving, helmet mounted all day long, twice on Sunday. Oh, see,
Yeah,
this is why I don't play with night vision and thermal stuff yet, because the price tag just makes me cringe. All right, so I promised my wife I would be kind, but Joe asked how's Gilly doing with farms and related. She's kind of fallen off the wagon, if we're being honest with ourselves. Um,
I just heard her say something in the background.
yeah, she just said she's like right on the other side of this wall, but
You got that cot
like
ready in that spare room?
no, I pay the mortgage here. I'll sleep wherever I want.
Okay. You can take a picture and post it on the Facebook group of you sleeping on the couch tonight.
Nah, I'll fall asleep in the bed. She's not strong enough to push me out of bed once I establish myself. But
Movable force.
no, like I said, she just I mean, I know that I know, and she has told me that firearms training is something she definitely needs to spend some time with. I don't think it's as high of a priority for her, mostly because, especially concealed carry, I don't think is a super high priority, mostly because everywhere we go, I am carrying. And the number of times that she is out without me, where she would be solely responsible for her own well-being, is fairly minimal. So I don't think it's a super high priority. Not to mention we live in a pretty damn safe town, so it's not like it's not like, gunfights at the OK Corral happening out in our front yard all the time. It is something I would like to see her get a little more familiar with, if for no other reason than the fact that she knows how to handle like an AR. She is not very well trained at it. Give her old Remington hunting rifle, and I don't want to piss her off within 300 yards of the house. But there are certain firearms she's very comfortable with and very adept at and very well trained on, and outside of those couple of firearms, she hasn't spent the time really training with them. So it kind of comes down to that whole conversation about like, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, and it's like what everyone puts their time and attention into things they believe will give them the best payoff. And what Gillian's been really focused on since we came back from prepper camp has been less firearms training, and she's really been investing herself in learning homeopathic medicine, different herbs and different things she can harvest from nature that have medicinal properties. She's been laser focused on that. And it is an area of prepping I have very little to no knowledge in. So quite frankly, it kind of gets to the old argument that you and I always went into, which was, do I spend my time learning this thing that this other person in my group knows dramatically better than I do, or do I spend my time learning this thing that this other person knows nothing about at all, so that the entire mag has more knowledge? Will she spend the time to get her concealed carry permit, get better training firearms? If she decides the juice is worth the squeeze. Will I help? Absolutely. But at the same time, if she decides that for the good of the family, there's this other thing that I admit I know nothing about and don't have a lot of interest in, and if she wants to invest her time in learning that thing, the whole family is better prepared, because she is bringing knowledge to the entire family I don't have, because I've just never been exposed to it.
Yeah.
So that's my wife and firearms and related. If I put a firearm in her hand and said, guard that door, I have full faith and confidence she would. Do I think she's going to be like running 1 to 5 drills with me and shooting for Instagram clout? Absolutely no. I don't think it's a focal point of hers, and I don't begrudge that. I don't begrudge her for that. It's just got to do what you think is going to give you the best return on your investment. And Joe also asked, grid down preps for sanitation and washing clothes. What are you thinking? I mean, Andrew, what's your preps? What's in your preps currently for sanitation in general?
I got
Shovel,
some,
backyard.
yeah, basically. I mean, I got some bleach, stuff like that, but that's only good for, I mean, shelf stable for I think what 6 months or something like that. Uh, so I mean, wipes, wipes, bleach for sanitation, soap. I got a lot of soap for like wash clothing, detergent stuff like that. If grid went down, um, basically it's okay. Where can I get water from? Fill the sink up and wash clothes in the sink that I have. I have a pretty good kitchen sink that I could deep. I could easily do water, get water in that, soak clothes that I need to, easily hang up some 550 cord and for a clothesline, stuff like that. 5 gallon buckets. I have a 5 gallon bucket in the garage, just like what Tom is saying. So yeah, there's that. Boil some water. Do a sponge bath. If you have to, stuff like that. So my experience isn't it doesn't go, or my preps probably are lacking in that position in that spot. But I mean, I do have hand soap, sanitizer, bleach, and wipes and stuff like that that would last me for a while.
Yeah, in the sanitation realm, I mean, outside of like your normal household stuff, specific things I do that kind of feed into this is even before the great toilet paper shortage of 2020. I always make a point of having a case sitting on the shelf. If I open the last case of toilet paper on the shelf, we go buy another one so that there's always at least one full unopened case of toilet paper on the shelf. Same with paper towels, like same with hand soap. We buy the big bulk packs, and when we open the last one, we go buy two, three more. And it's that way with toothpaste and toothbrushes and shampoo and like a lot of Joe said grid down, but I think what a lot of people miss is the fact that like very few collapse scenarios happen suddenly. Most of the time, there's a lead up to a collapse. There's a period of like supply chain shock and hyperinflation. Tell me if this starts to sound familiar, guys. But like, there's a period where things get bad before they get really, really, really bad. And it's those periods where like you may not be able to get hand soap, you may not be able to get shampoo, you may not be able to get washing detergent. So by making a point of doing what preppers do, guys, and having two or three on the shelf at all times, you make it to where when you go to the grocery store and you can't get the stuff you need to wash your clothes, it doesn't matter. You have extra. Just means that, in a month or two, we better find some more, but we got time. It doesn't become an emergency immediately. It means that I should never be in the position where I sit down to do business and there's no toilet paper left in the house because there should be a case sitting on the shelf at all times. It means that simple things like having hand soap, antibacterial hand soap, simple things like having alcohol prep pads or having triple antibiotic ointment. If you want to go, depending on how far out of the washing your clothes you want to get, but having those things on standby so that you can prevent a skin infection or you can just maintain your general appearance becomes really, really helpful. Now, as far as grid down, understand that if the grid goes down for more than 12 hours, washing clothes is going to be very low down the priority list because at that point you better have every freaking ounce of water you can get available for critical life functions like drinking water. So I can say that during Ida we had a water pressure failure, a power failure down here, and I have a 35-gallon trash can tapped into the downspouts of my house. So every time it rained, I had 35 gallons of water sitting out there. We used that to give ourselves bucket baths. We used that to flush toilets. We used that to wash hands. We could have gone through the trouble of. I actually keep all the stuff I need to build basically a homemade Berkey all collapsed down sitting in the garage at all times. We could have turned into potable water if we'd had to. So, does your beard reach your belly button? Okay, the beard used to reach my belly button, but I gave it a haircut
You
a couple months ago.
did you donate it to Locks of Love?
It wasn't okay. It wasn't that long. I cut about 4 inches of it off. It was getting a little out of control, and actually, like, I haven't told my wife and daughter yet because my daughter gets so pissed at me every time I cut my beard. But I'm kind of thinking about maybe cutting some more of it off. Like,
You should
I've had
shave
my
it. Don't even tell them.
no. There's only two kinds of people that that don't have beards. There's women and children. I am neither. Sorry to you guys out there that can't grow beards. My heart bleeds for you. But anyway, like, I don't know. I've reached a point where there's certain things that it gets caught in all the time and it aggravates the piss out of me. And I think, if I cut like that much more of it off, maybe. I haven't decided yet. My wife just told you to shut your mouth.
Diet.
No, I'm not dying it either. I'm the salt and pepper is starting to come in very slowly but surely. But so yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of my perspective on like grid down, sanitation, washing clothes. I think there is an element of like, don't overlook the simple stuff, which is if the grid is down but you have a generator, you can wash your clothes. Washing machines only run off 110 volts. They don't pull that many amps. A generator of any reasonable size will run a washing machine. And then if you can't run the dryer, which I can because I have a gas dryer, so that runs off 110 as well. It doesn't pull a lot of current. But if like push came to shove, just hang up some clotheslines with 550 cord in the backyard. Hang your clothes. Mm-hmm. If you can't get the washing machine running, wash that stuff in a sink or friggin' put some water in a big wash basin and just wash it by hand. I mean, go old school, low tech, and you can still get the job done without modern power. But the trick is you need the materials. You need detergent, or you better know how to make your own soap. So what I lean back on is not so much the I need the ox cart powered, washing machine in the backyard in case the grid goes down. But it's more of I need to have these materials on hand so that if I have to wash my clothes, then I am able to wash my clothes because I have the stuff I need to do it, even if the method in which I do it is not the most conducive to do it. Know what I mean, Vern?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, pro tip. Before you start looking at the hand power washing machine, go buy 2 extra things of washing detergent. Start by having extras on the shelf that way, and if nothing else, it's good for bartering. Because you better believe if things really cooked off here in this country, I'm going to be the last person on the street to run out of, laundry detergent and bars of hand soap. I'm going to have every neighbor on the block want to hand me stuff for stuff that I have that they don't. And I will accept gold teeth in a pinch. So, I kind of hit you with a last minute surprise and said, cook up a question from you to me. And I have one for you.
Uh-oh.
Hopefully these don't take too long. We're at an hour and 20 and going.
All right. Well, what do you got?
What are you doing to help other people prep? And you can't say the podcast because that's cheating. Because I thought about this, like you don't have kids that you claim on your taxes, at least.
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of. But I do know that you do, at least I think you spend a lot of time trying to like spread that knowledge to other people. But I wanted to ask, like, what do you do? Like, it's an easy question for me to answer because my answer is I'm trying my best to raise an anarcho-libertarian on the other side of this wall right here, who hopefully one day will question authority and try to be a good moral person. And that is like my gift / curse to the rest of the world long after I'm gone, is that I'm trying to leave a child behind who will hopefully be a good influence on the rest of the world. And if not, she's sure to drive y'all freaking crazy. So y'all have fun with that one. But what are you doing, Andrew?
So a lot of the times, because I spend so much time at work, it's basically like if something's happening, if we have a storm coming up, if there's riots going on, lately, like if I spend a lot of time listening to Forward Observer, if there are shortages that they're talking about that's coming up. Um, oh, and so if there's stuff coming up, I mean, I'll talk to them and I'll ask them. I said, hey, like especially a couple of the guys, like a lot of them keep popping out kids, and it's like that's not such a bad thing, but it's just like, okay, well, do you have the supplies? Do you have the formula set aside that you can supplement in case something happens and your wife can't feed the child? Do or that something happens, they for some reason can't or won't eat, that stuff. It's like, um, do you have other means of feeding your child? Do you have diapers set aside for at least, I know they grow fast, so you go through multiple sizes, but like, do you have that stuff set aside? Do you have wipes set aside? Do you have things set aside so that if something is going on in the city, you don't have to like run out and buy stuff? And so I mean, I ask him questions like that. One of my really good friends who moved back from out west with things when him and his wife moved out there. Like him and we had a good talk about, hey, this is okay. You're out there, so like what can you get? And he's really gotten into the preparedness thing with over us talking and everything. So it's just sitting down and questioning people what they have, what they don't have, and then asking them why. Like, why don't you do this? And a lot, and that's the thing is I've noticed some people will sit there and, oh, yeah, I've gotten instead of one thing of this, whatever, I grab two or three now kind of thing. And, out of conversation. So I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to do is opening people's eyes to it, to the idea of self-preservation.
Kind of what I had hoped you would say.
Okay. So here's my question for you. Going from being single to having a wife and child, how has your mindset changed through the years?
It'd be a really easy answer to say it's changed a lot and say something offhand like that, but how has it changed? With regards to, well, first of all, I mean, having a wife and a daughter are probably two of the biggest reasons I got into prepping in the first place, because I was suddenly responsible for more people than just myself, and that kind of motivated me to start putting things in place just in case I had to care for additional people. It has changed my prepping in a lot of ways, from a very mobile, very I'll figure it out, to very much a bug in, hold the fort mentality, because having to do a move, even in a single vehicle with multiple people, you get into a lot more risk and a lot more opportunities for Murphy's Law to bite you in the butt. If we were doing a big move, my wife and I would be in separate vehicles, which is its own special little set of problems that could crop up from that. So there's all that. It has changed, even separate from prepping. Having a wife and a daughter has changed my perspective from a very black pill, nihilistic, burn it all down and start over again person, to a person who like genuinely, almost, I would say, ultra idealistically wants to believe things can be fixed and saved and maintained. I've said on more than one occasion that, like, my gripes with the direction my country has decided to take in the last several years have been extremely frustrating for me. But in spite of my frustration, I am still like almost desperately invested in the idea that like there has to be a way to save this, because I know that the alternative, and this is probably the biggest change, the alternative to any functioning government, and I know, roll your eyes at me when I allude that this government is functional, but like, give it to me for a second. But the alternative to a functioning government is a broken government and a country run amok, and it would be very analogous to what I saw in Iraq and New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. It would be an environment where might makes right, where only the most violent, the most vicious have rights, because rights are only maintained through the application of violence or even just the threat of violence. And it is a situation when you have complete breakdown of society in which I know that as a general rule, women and children are going to be in grave danger. And I don't want to go any further down that road. And I don't want my wife and daughter to live in that world. When it was just me, I was actually pretty okay with that. Because my point of view was, if things ever really popped off, if you step foot on my lawn, you get dealt with. And I have no worry or concerns about defending my own life or even my own interest violently and viciously. I know that is well within my comfort zone. And not to brag, I like my odds against anybody else. But with the two of them in tow, I very much do not ever want to see that come to pass. It is probably the reason why, to this day, even temporary societal breakdown, like what I was afraid might have happened after Hurricane Ida, even though it didn't. That is probably like Uncle Randy always says, what is your zombie? That will always be my zombie, a societal breakdown. Not that it is the biggest or even the most common thing that could affect this family, but is the thing that scares me the worst, because I know that in order to survive it, you have to give up a certain amount of your innocence, and you have to be willing to be as vicious and violent as necessary to survive. And I don't want my wife and daughter to have that life experience. I've had to have it, but I don't want them to. I don't want the two of them to have to take someone else's life to preserve their own. So that has probably been like my greatest mental emotional shift in having a family, is that way beyond just wanting to protect them physically, I don't want them to be exposed to the worst of what I know the world has in store for them. I want them to go to their grave happy and innocent, and, lollipops and rainbows and unicorn and some fairy dust. I want them to go through their life like that and not have to do the things I've been trained to do. Which I imagine most husbands and fathers would probably agree with me on that.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I got two nieces, and I mean, you and I have talked about that stuff, and so yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to you and your nieces, you're in a lot the same vein I am. It's you don't want people who have never experienced violence to have to experience violence towards them, or them having to use it to protect themselves, because it's something that it changes you. And for a lot of us that have gone through and come out the other side, we've kind of said it is the cost of doing business, but you still don't want young, innocent people to have to go through that. Like no one even needs to meet or talk to like a child soldier from sub-Saharan Africa who is killing people left and right by the age of 8 or 9. No one even has to meet that young person to understand they for the rest of their lives they will carry that scar with them. And we just don't want that for ours.
No, I agree with you, and that's the thing is I don't want. I mean, Gillian's a grown woman. She knows the world. She knows there is ugly out there. Piper, she doesn't. My nieces, they don't necessarily know the evil that's out there, and I really don't want them to know it any sooner than they actually realize. Like, let them still be their thing and play, like this kind of thing. So, but yeah, I got nothing else. Merry Christmas. Since we didn't say that at the top of the show.
No, we didn't say the top of the show, but Merry Christmas, Happy New. Actually, there will probably be one more episode come out right before the New Year.
Yeah,
but definitely Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Please, for the love of God, try to spend some time with your family and your friends and your loved ones, and hopefully you haven't been too naughty out there. And the fat guy in the red suit with the beard will bring you something cool in a couple of days. But if you're on the naughty. But if you do end up on the naughty list, you're in good company at least, because
Right.
you know.
Make sure you tell the kids that Santa Claus likes a shot of whiskey and a cigar for So we got to change the tradition. No more milk and cookies.
Whiskey and cigars.
Whiskey and cigars.
I can get behind that. That might be a Cajun Santa thing.
But no, Merry Christmas to everybody, and thank you for all the support throughout the whole year. Every throughout this whole journey with the whole show and stuff. Thank you for the support. But no, thank you for the support within this year, and see you guys in 2023. I'm going to try to make the episode with Phil for New Year's. My work schedule is kind of nuts right now, but we'll see. So. But
and to Tom, who's in the chat, I don't see you in the Manus X group, or the Matter of Facts Manus group. So you might need to try to join again.
Yeah, and if everybody, if people liked this, I'm sure we'll do it again. The question and ask us anything kind of thing. But no, we'll talk to y'all later.
Yep. Matter of Facts podcast heading out the door. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to everybody.
See ya.